45 days, 120 kilograms at market. For many farmers, that sounds like too big a promise, almost impossible on a regular farm.
However, in high-yield farms in Europe, especially in intensive farming systems in Germany and Holland, that result doesn't come from luck. It stems from a precise feeding method, observing and managing livestock during the most critical phase before sending them to slaughter.
There are farmers in Brazil losing money every month without even knowing it.
They look at their pigs, see seemingly large animals, and believe everything is normal.
But losses don't always manifest as disease, death, or a visible problem.
Sometimes it's in the kilos that never appear on the scale. It's in a carcass with poorer finish. It's in the money deducted by the slaughterhouse. It's in a worse feed conversion ratio than it should be. And here, a nagging question arises. How many kilos of weight gain is each animal missing in the final 45 days? Just because
How much money is wasted when rations aren't changed at the right time, when drinking water isn't checked daily, when stress levels rise unnoticed? In this video, you will discover what European farmers do during that critical phase.
You will understand how they get livestock to nearly 120 kilograms, with a uniformity that would impress any Brazilian veterinarian.
All have a similar finish. All are ready for market within the same time frame.
The most important thing is that we are not talking about mechanically copying foreign realities. The idea here is to understand the system.
Because Europeans have understood something many farmers are still learning. Livestock do not grow in a straight line.
They have efficiency windows, times when every kilo of feed is converted into the best meat, and also times when farmers are practically throwing money out the window onto the bedding. Therefore, the final 45 days cannot be considered a mere waiting period before slaughter. It is a technical, high-intensity, and profitable phase.
Phased feeding, clean and readily available water, stress reduction, stable schedules, and feed conversion ratio monitoring are all.
According to the original content's focus, that oversight can cost 30 to 40 kilos per animal in a batch. This is not an exaggeration.
Before we continue, think about your last batch of pigs. Were they truly uniform at market? You know how much feed was spent per kilo gained. If you can't answer, perhaps the first change isn't to buy more, but to measure better. Because what is not measured almost always costs you dearly tomorrow.
What surprises a Brazilian farmer most when first entering an intensive farm in Germany or Holland is not the size of the pens, the machinery. When they look at the pigs and realize that almost all animals seem to be cast from the same mold. They are in the same weight range,
Have a similar finish, and are ready for market within the same time frame. That uniformity is not random.
It is the result of a strict feeding protocol followed long before the final days. Europeans have understood something that completely changes the perception of finishing. Animals do not grow at the same rate every day. Their bodies go through metabolic efficiency windows. Times when feed is converted into meat with a much higher response rate, and also periods when the amount of feed consumed no longer yields similar efficiency. If farmers don't know which window the animals are in, they might be wasting expensive feed at the wrong time and losing the opportunity to boost weight. For that reason, in the European system, the final 45 days before animals reach their optimal stage are not seen as a mere countdown. They are considered the decisive phase for the actual profit margin of the entire herd. Each phase has a goal. Every ration adjustment has a reason.
Every change in energy, protein, fiber, water, and routine is aimed at bringing the animal to the precise point of carcass weight and finish. The problem is not feeding more just to feed more.
The problem is feeding better at the right time.
In many Brazilian farms, the mistake begins precisely when the animal appears to be large. Farmers look at the herd and believe most of the work is done. But that's precisely when the European protocol becomes stricter. because they know that the result is not just about making the animal grow. It's about making them grow efficiently, without waste, without unnecessary stress, and without losing weight during the final sprint.
The difference between reaching 90 kilogram and getting close to 120 kilograms, according to the logic presented in the original content, might lie in understanding these windows.
In the early days of the finishing phase, muscles are still developing strongly. Then, the focus shifts to finish and the accumulation of intramuscular fat, marbling. Further on, the goal is no longer to force growth, but to maintain what has been achieved and deliver a stable, uniform, and profitable carcass.
An hour without feed, a broken water trough, or a sudden change can disrupt the planned rhythm. And here arises another important question. Does your farm have a real plan for those 45 days? Or do you just maintain the same diet until market? Are your animals' rations adjusted by phase? Or do they all eat the same until the very end? Because for Europeans, the final phase is not improvisation. It is calculated, observed, and adjusted. That is the difference between intention and protocol. One side hopes the results will come. The other side builds results day by day. In the first 15 days of this final phase, the animal is still in an active muscle growth stage.
This is the part many farmers underestimate, but Europeans handle it with maximum attention. At that point, the animal's
Rations cannot be poor, improvised, or merely designed to save immediate costs. If muscles are ready to grow, but the farmer reduces, they will lose one of the best opportunities of the entire cycle. Therefore, in European farms, the first 15 days of the finishing phase are
always under control. Quality fats are supplemented in adequate amounts. Protein is adjusted to avoid amino acid waste and maintain sufficient fiber for the digestive system to operate at a high pace. Nothing is left to chance. Every ingredient energy drives growth. Protein supports muscle formation. Fiber A clear difference emerges when we compare this logic with what is still happening on many Brazilian farms, precisely when the animal can convert feed into the best meat.
Some farmers reduce the energy supply for fear the animal will have too much fat at slaughter. This intention seems prudent, but the consequences can be very costly.
At that point, the money seemingly saved from feed disappears on the scale. Then, from day 16 to day 30 before slaughter, the strategy changes. The goal is no longer just to promote strong muscle. Now enters a more subtle phase, focusing on the accumulation of intramuscular. This point requires balance, because the problem is not stuffing the animal with peripheral fat, but building a more valuable, uniform, and better accepted finish by the market. During this phase, Europeans adjust the energy to protein ratio. They slightly reduce fiber and increase feeding frequency.
The animal must be satiated, but never overstuffed or overfed. This difference may seem small, but it is profoundly technical. A satiated animal maintains stable intake, calm behavior, and a good conversion ratio. An overstuffed animal would...
So farm staff learn from day one that feeding is not just about filling the trough. It's about observing how the animal responds.
Do your animals eat regularly, or do they go from hungry to overeating? Are rations adjusted by phase, or do they remain the same?
Because these critical 15 days are not a mere stepping stone. They are the time when the herd begins to define the finish it will bring to the slaughterhouse. If management is precise, weight will increase along with quality. If management fails, the loss will be hidden until the scale reveals the final truth.
That's where the difference begins between selling a heavy animal and selling a truly profitable carcass tomorrow. The final 15 days before slaughter are the most critical phase.
This is precisely when many farmers become complacent. They see the animal large, heavy, seemingly ready, and believe most of the work is done. But in the European protocol, the opposite happens. When the herd enters that final sprint, management does not loosen.
It becomes more precise, more closely monitored, and more careful, because any small error can erase a portion of the weight built over weeks.
At this stage, the ration is reformulated one last time. The goal is no longer to stimulate rapid growth as in the maintain metabolic stability and deliver an animal to the slaughterhouse with the lowest possible stress level. Europeans know that just being heavy is not enough. It must achieve a good finish with a uniform carcass and no signs of chaotic management in the final moments. For that reason, drinking water plays a crucial role. In some systems, electrolytes are mixed into the water to help balance the animal's body during this final phase. The feeding schedule is also adjusted, especially in outdoor farming systems or in environments where high temperatures can reduce feed intake. If it's hotter, feeding will be concentrated during the coolest hours.
The goal is very simple. Keep the animal eating well, drinking well, and free from heat stress.
This is not to make the animal suffer or to improvise. It is a technical measure to minimize carcass weight loss during transport. Sudden ration changes, frequent pen transfers, mixing herds without criteria, irregular feeding times, and lack of drinking water will cause stress. And stress is not an abstract word. Stress increases cortisol. Cortisol consumes muscle. Muscle consumption means losing kilos, and every kilo lost is money that never returns to the farmer's account. Europeans treat these final weeks as if the animal were an athlete before a competition.
Stable environment, repetitive routines, timely feeding, clean water always available, and minimal movement. In Brazil, there are still farms where automatic feeding systems are out of control, and animals go for hours without adequate access to food. So look at your own habits. What happens in the final 15 days? Is the herd kept calm, or does it undergo constant change?
If this final phase fails, the animal not only stops gaining weight, it can also lose some of the gains already achieved. The number that almost no one calculates will appear when the process is no longer theoretical, but enters the farm's ledger. A farmer in inland São Paulo, after closely observing the European finishing system, decided to apply it to his own reality. He did not change the existing pig breeds. He did not buy new. According to the report presented in the original content, the average weight gain was 18 kilos of live weight per animal in 45 days. The number that appears on the calculator is not a fantasy. It's money that has probably slipped through your fingers without you clearly seeing it. And that is one of the harshest truths of livestock farming.
What is not measured seems normal. If the batch of pigs goes to market lighter, the farmer blames the weather, the breed, feed prices, or the market.
The most expensive mistake in the final days is not always in the feed formula. Often it lies in stressful management. Mixing herds, irregular feeding, or allowing excessive competition at the trough will create a stressful environment. And stress in the final phase will cost kilos. For them, the final weeks before slaughter are like an athlete's preparation before a competition. No one changes an athlete's training without reason. No one disrupts their rest time.
No one abruptly changes their diet. The same applies to livestock. A stable environment, predictable routines.
At a Brazilian farm visited, the automatic feeding system was out of control, and animals were starved for up to 4 hours without feed.
But the feed conversion ratio was silently dropping. When he fixed the problem, the difference appeared in the next batch. They know that in the final 45 days, a well-managed animal must convert about 2.2 to 2.5 kilos of feed for disease, stress, drinking water, feed formula, temperature, management. Something is going off track. And on your farm, does anyone look at that number? Or do the pigs simply eat what's available, go to market when they seem ready, and then everyone hopes the books will balance? Because without that data, farmers work very hard,
but almost always make decisions based solely on the animal's appearance. The question many farmers ask when hearing about this protocol is very direct.
The slaughterhouse doesn't simply pay for the largest animal. They pay for usable meat, dressing percentage, and reaching a 120s finish.
On the farm, the pretty number is not always the one that brings the most money. Therefore, in well-managed intensive farming systems, the target is usually between 110 and 120. The right question is not how much more weight the animal can gain, but how much profit it can generate without breaking the profit margin. To start applying this logic, you don't need to overhaul the entire farm at once. The first step is to know where you are today.
Look at your last batch of pigs. What was the average slaughter weight? What was the estimated feed conversion ratio? How many days were these animals in the system?
What ration do you provide in the final 45 days? What is the frequency? What is the quantity? Does the animal eat comfortably, drink enough water, and gain weight steadily?
And this can be worth a lot of money. Farmers who have applied this method report that the first batch is for adjustment.
With a similar finish and within the same time frame. That brings predictability. It allows for better feed cost calculation,